On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, how to build and protect generational wealth. So, welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and we are joined remotely today by your financial coach, George Corbello. How you doing, George?
Shawn, I'm doing well. I gotta say, it's hot in Florida. I just wanted to complain about the weather because that's what we do and that's what I do. I'm an old man now. That's just all I do. I yell at the kids from the porch and I complain about the weather. But doing well, man. I'm doing okay.
You non-Florida natives. You
Exactly. Exactly.
sorry bunch of
Um,
non-Florida. I had to walk. I today was my son's graduation from fifth grade, and I went to the graduation ceremony, and so I parked, and then I had a walk of what, a quarter of a mile maybe, a tenth of a mile, not very far to get from where I parked to the entrance of the school, and then I had to walk back from the entrance of the school back to my car. And you just get used to having this layer of sweat underneath all your. I could literally, we were standing in the cafeteria where they were doing the graduation ceremony, and I could feel the sweat rolling down my back. And whatever, that is Florida.
it's a
But
Tuesday.
yeah, welcome to Florida on a Tuesday, or what is today? Thursday. So, anyway, we have a guest on this week's show. So, I do want to introduce our guest. Our guest is Whitney Elkins-Hutten. She is a trailblazing real estate maven committed to empowering busy professionals, turning their dreams into reality through savvy wealth building strategies. Her journey began in 2002, marked by a home run and a near loss, shaping her into a seasoned expert eager to share the secrets of her success. She's the director of investor education at passiveinvesting.com. She is the founder of ashwealth.com. She's author of two books, Money for Tomorrow, How to Build and Protect Generational Wealth, which is published with Bigger Pockets, the big real estate investing website. She's co-author of the international #1 bestseller, Resilient Women in Life and Business. She's the host of the Passive Investing Made Simple YouTube show and podcast, and a partner in over 800 million in real estate holdings, including over 6,500 residential units, 15 express car washes, and more than 2,200 self-storage units across 11 states, with experience in flipping over 5 million in real estate, residential real estate. So welcome to the show, Whitney.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
So, I think one of the things that I was curious about from your bio, your journey began in 2002, marked by a home run and a near loss. So, what was the home run? And I think more interestingly, what was
Yeah.
the near loss? And then what did those teach you?
Well, I would like to say that, what I do today as the director of passive or investor education at passiveinvesting.com, that is what I went to school for, but it's not. I actually started off in public health. And so my first real estate deal in 2002 was completely by accident. I bought a house with a significant other. A month later, the relationship fell apart. And it was one of those houses that, you know, the green shag carpet, psychedelic daisies painted all over the walls. Like every ounce of that thing needed to be redone. But when the relationship fell apart, I was the money partner in the relationship. So everything was, I bought the house, everything was under my name. My boyfriend at the time, he was bringing the work side of things, the skills. And then, he exits left and I have the house and I'm like, oh boy. The kitchen's ripped out. I don't know how to lay tile. I had to go to Home Depot, take a lot of the classes, buy the book, Home Depot 123 Home Improvement book, and I taught myself drywall, tiling, paid my friends in sushi, beer, and pizza to help me
There
put
you
that
go.
house back together. I mean, here's the best deal, George, that I ever got on a part of my real estate rehabs. I had 1,500 square feet of floors refinished for an $80 sushi meal.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Wow.
Like that. How many times would you do that? You could do that over and over as many times as you
It's
could.
sign me up now.
So, so that was my first deal. And after 11 months, I sold the property thinking, it's approaching 2008. There was a lot of cracks in the market. I thought this whole deal was going to sink me. But when I sold it, that's when the light bulb came on. I mean, I got 52K in my pocket, free and clear equity, tax free because of the 121 exclusion. Thank you to the IRS. And then that's when I realized I hadn't been paying for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance because I had roommates in the property. I hadn't even been paying for my utilities. I was making money every month. I was
Sure.
like, okay, I'm gonna do this again. So I take that money, reinvest it into another property, this time in the home that I want. A nice little mountain bungalow up in Estes Park, because I love climbing, I love skiing. Why not live right in the middle of the mountains? Well, it violated the very laws of real estate, which is location, location, location. Um, and at the end of that deal, fast forward, do the same thing, put that property back together, go to sell it. It takes me 12 months to sell the property.
Oh, wow.
And I got an offer 2 days into listing it, 30K below price. I got the same offer 12 months later when I finally took it. And then, long story short, uh, the deal had me breaking even, but during the due diligence process, we identify about $12,000 worth of deficiencies, 6 of which I actually came to the table with money, to fix the retaining wall, that really didn't need to be repaired, but we repaired it anyways. Everybody was locked into the contract. The buyers inflated the cost to 30K to repair the retaining wall. And what was breaking the retaining wall was my neighbor had a tenant living in a bus. So the house was built into the side of a hill. So if you guys are watching the video, hills,
Yeah.
right? Her bus, her guy lived above the house, which is down here. And, I'm just sitting here going, move the bus. Told her to move the bus. Oh, everything
Right.
will be hunky dory. They put the bus, house closes, the bus moves back into place, and the retaining wall collapses. The bus goes into the roof of the house.
Ooh,
Yeesh. That might be a problem.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I get a call the day after closing, just chaos in the background. What sounded like a shotgun being pumped and a guy screaming, "I'm going to shoot you," which was happening. Um, because they were trying to get him out of the bus, and he's still in the bus that's in the roof of of the house. Anyway,
Okay,
so
that'd definitely be a problem.
That's
so
got to
long story
be.
short, I was sitting here going like, am I gonna get sued for this? But it turns out, the way my realtor had structured the deal, I was free and clear of any liability. But
So,
you
so
know,
the bus fell on the roof of your house.
but yep, within 24 hours after closing,
That's got to be an interesting insurance claim.
it's
Bus fell
technically
on my
there.
house.
They
I
tried
got
to
a
come
story for
back.
you.
Yeah. They tried to come back on me, but the way my realtor structured the contract is that I brought money and they hired all the contractors. They hired the engineers that signed off on the property. So the buyer had hired everybody. They had signed off on the work. They had signed off on the closing. Um, and they even approved for the bus to be moved back into position.
Wow. And this is so where is this house? What state are you in with this house? What
Colorado.
Colorado?
Yeah, so I'm in the
Okay.
mountains. So right next to Rocky Mountain National Park. My house butted up to the property line or the national park line to Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah, because I'm thinking in Florida, if a retaining wall fails, whatever it is that's behind the retaining wall is falling into the water, not into another house.
No, those poop rolls downhill, so do buckets.
Exactly.
Gravity will always win, is what I was told.
Yep, yep.
Exactly.
Laws of physics still applied in this case.
Well, that's good. I mean, I guess the lesson there is, make sure that you have a good realtor, make sure you do your due diligence, make sure as a buyer and a seller you're disclosing everything. So, yeah, I guess that's your near loss, right?
Yeah, I actually did uh with depreciation, I broke even on that property. It did look like a paper loss, whenever you're doing your whole taxes, but I lived to see another day. And that's the takeaway of why I continue to invest in real estate is a lot of things can go really, really wrong, but you know, one of the beauties of real estate, especially if you have, you know, some sort of control over the investment, is that it can preserve capital. Maybe you lose the cash flow. You're probably going to, you know, preserve equity growth in some form or fashion, especially if you're able to push the value of the property. You also get paid in tax benefits. And so, you know, you have different ways to make income and shelter that income on real estate, whereas on other asset classes, you don't really have that.
So let me
Well, I
let
mean,
me ask let me ask this in regards to, because we got a lot of listeners when we talk about passive income, different definitions of what that might look like, how that's going to be, right? So for you, like, how do you define it, right? And are there any beginner friendly type ways to get started on? Like, how do I when we talk about this, and obviously probably some things in the book, right? That probably, but like, what's your definition, and how do we get people to kind of start thinking a little differently on that?
Well, so there's passive income according to kind of like the IRS, and you know, meaning, you know, are you able to, you know, leverage time and money in order to for a lot of that to pass through tax free? But there's also passive with your time. So here's a good example. I can buy my neighbor's property. I can do the rehab. I can swing the hammer, paint the walls, do all that. I can put a tenant in it. I can manage the tenant. According to the IRS, any income I bring on that is quote unquote passive, which gets taxed differently
Right.
than me going to a W-2 job. But am I really passive? How many hours did I put into that? That was our first rental, true rental, because my husband and I did several live-in flips together after our learning a lot of lessons on that Estes Park property. And so we made hand over fist and equity, but then we didn't have cash flow. So had an active job flipping. What we needed was cash flow in order to buy our time back. But there's so many
Right.
different ways to do that. And we did our first rental property. We did go buy a house in a neighboring town. It didn't need a whole lot of love to it, but, repainted a couple rooms, fixed a fence, managed the whole property ourselves. And so it was levered time. I mean, the amount of money that I was bringing in, I was getting paid $400 an hour as opposed to 40. So I was able to amplify my income, but we can go into larger deals, or even to the different side of the equity stack and be in debt deals that require none of our time. And so, yes, passive income can be, it's not, there's active, 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 passive, passive, active, and passive, passive. So if anybody's following that, there's like, so it's like lay it out on a grid, like time and how you're earning your income.
Got it.
And yeah, and I think what you said really hit home with me in terms of even though the IRS might classify something as passive versus active, where you talk about passive versus active is more what is your involvement personally in the project. Because if you're painting the walls and you're making the repairs, the cosmetic repairs, that's active. That you're putting your time in versus hiring the contractors to paint or having a turnkey property where all you're doing is sitting back and collecting the income. That's a lot more passive, and that's where a lot more people would rather be spending their time is let me automate this, let me buy a piece of property, let me make sure the property runs smooth, but other than that, let me sit back and collect the rent.
Well, and that brings up a really interesting point. Yes, it's a sliding scale. So, we purchased 40 single family rentals as our next iteration of, scaling our portfolio. A lot of which were BRRRR properties, meaning we're buying below value, rehabbing the property, putting a tenant in, and refinancing out our own income in order to use that equity multiple times to buy property. They were all with a property manager, but you get to 40, you hit another ceiling of achievement. Now I'm managing property managers. So you get paid for the problems that you're going to solve. That's what you're going to get paid. So if you're wanting the larger checks in real estate, you're probably going to be way more active. If you're okay getting not smaller checks, but sharing returns in order to buy back a lot more of your time, you're going to be more on the passive side of things. Um, so the one scales really slowly, the other one scales very quickly, because now, like, if I am a true passive investor, and even then you still need to be active, you need to understand the investment, you need to vet the operator, vet the market, vet the deal, you need to acquire all those skills. It's not like you just go pick a ticker in the stock market and push the button, quick trade, you're done, right? Like, it's not that passive.
But that's how easy it should be. That's what TikTok told me it should be. Come on. Come on now. All right. All right. I
Most
get it. I get
people,
it.
technology is allowing for, it's like on crowdfunding platforms and stuff like that, they are allowing for, investments that, you know, uh, that would scale even further. But now you are limiting to the control on how you can scale your portfolio. You're getting closer to it being almost like a stock platform again, as opposed to
Right.
you being able to craft the portfolio of your dreams and desires that are going to give you the outcome. But when I learned how to not only double down on what I did really well, which was residential real estate, I knew I needed to diversify my portfolio into other parts of real estate, into other active businesses. Now I could do that through operators and not have to go become the master of car washes myself, or the master of self-storage, or the master of, um, you know, uh, writing notes, being, through being a private lender. Like, I could leverage other people in order to do that. So I really, for me, when I work with my investors, I try to help them understand how are you the CEO of your portfolio, and how can you lever working with other experts in the space as the COO over that particular investing vertical. But there's a
So,
lot of work to do as an investor before you even get there, right?
Gotcha.
We need to make
Gotcha.
sure that somebody has a really rock solid financial foundation, that they are actually not investing in order to save them from their own financial hardships they've created themselves, or that they're in currently, but that they're investing from a position of strength. Those are all the things that I work people through in my book, Money for Tomorrow.
So great segue in regards to money for tomorrow, right? How to build and protect generational wealth, right? So who's the book meant for? Is it better fit for beginners? Is it better fit for people who are already building wealth? Like I'll recommend this book to my clients. Is it meant for everybody, or like what is it meant for when you wrote the book itself?
So I had an avatar in mind, and the avatar was my daughter, somebody who is new to investing, in what would be the financial course that I wish she would take in high school and college, in order to, not learn this when she's in her 40s, right? How
Right.
do we get started the right way? Now, here's the thing, is there's a lot of habits to unwind. So, a more seasoned
Amazing.
investor would actually really benefit from a book like this. So somebody starting off, like if you've got kids, grandkids, I mean, even if you're listening to this podcast and you're like early in your financial journey, pick up the book. It's going to walk you through the blueprint end to end to get a rock solid foundation to prep you for investing. We do talk about investing in a very high level, but we're focused mostly on the strategy of investing, not the tactics, like not the shiny objects. Do we invest in,
Right.
multifamily real estate right now, or
Apple
opportunity?
would be great to invest in like
Right.
40
Do we
years
do the
ago.
stock market?
Exactly.
Um, Now, on the flip side, if you're a seasoned investor and you're sitting here in this market, watching all the volatility happen, the capitulation, and you're just kind of like, I don't know where we're going for the next 6 to 12 months. How do I deploy capital? There's probably you're missing a fundamental. There's either a leak in your foundation that's causing you a little bit of worry in the back of your head, or you're missing a fundamental strategy that needs to be implemented first before you start deploying capital in today's market.
well, and I think that's the issue, is that you want to make sure that whatever it is you're going to do, however it is you're going to make money, whether it's investing in real estate, whether it's creating a coaching practice, whether it's creating a law firm, you've got to have that plan for how am I going to build it? How am I going to create it? And how am I going to sustain it?
Mm-hmm.
right?
So many entrepreneurs, and I wouldn't say your run-of-the-mill investor necessarily isn't an entrepreneur, but they probably are investing to get rid of a pain, not to, at the end of the day, run towards something of value that they want to have. So they're trying to invest in order to build more cash flow and equity so they can get out of debt, take their family on vacation, maybe, limit their job. And so they take undue risk without fully understanding, hey, if I really track my income and expenses and I eliminate all those things that don't align with my values, even if they're just a 10, 15, $50 a month expense, even just those small moves, when added up and compounded over time, can be $1 million swing to my net worth in 10
Right.
years. I think those are the things, those are the, I equate it, I coach youth soccer, right? And anybody that plays the sport, what do? You don't just run out and, on the field and start playing a game. No, you go warm up, you run around the field, you pass the ball, you learn, take some shots on goal, right? You master the basic skills because you're always, any game that you play is going to be putting together some sort of combination of those basic skills. Okay. And so it shouldn't be any different with investing. But what do?
Just
Okay.
jump in.
We
We
jump
jump
in.
in.
We
Jump
like
in.
read.
I download an
I,
app and I see what happens.
I open up Apple News, and of course, the algorithm has me totally pegged and knows that I love investing, and so it throws out, I see The Street or Jim Cramer, like, hey, here are the top like 3 dividend stocks that I need to invest in, and people go do that. That's cool, but that's a tactic. We need to understand the strategy, and does that
Right.
actually fit our strategy?
Well, I mean, the thing is, and again, I think if it's touched upon in the book as well, I want it, like you said about mindset, right? You talk about like some mindset shifts that are needed, right? Most of us, and again, talk about most Americans, right? We're in survival mode right now. We're kind of like just like how do I handle debt or the beginning basics of investing, or I don't have enough to retire, and all of these you hear it all probably, right? How do we change that mindset though from that survival mode, right, to that long-term wealth building? Because everybody says this is what needs to be done. We know it needs to be done, right? If we want to be happy, apparently, we got to be happy in certain places and things like that. But like, what are some of the things you recommend for people to kind of make the shift? Because that's the hardest part, is that mindset shift, to
It
be able
is,
to
and
to
it's
be
the
able to be
combination with
successful.
2 other things. It's the mindset, the skills,
Mm-hmm.
and then the network, right? You have to have all 3 in combination. Anytime you're butting up against, a ceiling of achievement, you're just like, I don't understand how to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Instead of, it's real. This is something I'm working with my daughter, she'll say, I can't. I'm like, pause, switch it to how can I, right? Because our brain wants to fill in the blank. If we tell it I can't, we shut it down. Otherwise, if we like leave, do this like whenever you're making a grocery list. If you just stop and don't add anything else, you'll get to the grocery store and you're like, oh, there was something else that I needed to pick
Right.
up. But if you like actually draw blank lines at the end of the list, your brain will start filling in those blanks. Okay, so mindset, skills, networks. We got to get really clear on how those 3 interact. But when it comes to mindset, you know, we've got 3 type of investors. We've got the people that are just that live for today, like they're the spenders. Then we got the person that is like overtly living for tomorrow. They're the savers, the kind of the hoarders of cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to get both sides to being the steward. Because money is a tool. Okay. I know so many people equate, their path to, financial independence, financial freedom. But that's just a tool. It's not a destination. Okay, when you hit financial independence or financial freedom, what are you trying to get? You're probably trying to get time back, choice back, location back. Maybe you want to create an impact in the world. So getting clear there, like, how is what you're doing today limiting you to get what you really want, which is being a steward of your wealth? And then we got to understand, what are those little blocks? I mean, we all have them. Are you a perfectionist? Are you an avoider? Like, who's the little devil that sits on your shoulder whenever you don't want to get something done? Okay. Do you always judge? Those are the type of things. Do you need to control everything so badly that it just stands in your way? So we need to understand, which side of the coin are you on? Are you the saver? Are you the spender? How can we get you to the steward? Then we got to figure out who the little devil is sitting on your shoulder. And that little devil sitting on your shoulder, it comes probably from your belief system, how you were raised,
Yeah.
maybe where you went to school, what era did you grow up in, the tailwinds of the Great Depression or the Korean and Vietnam War? Are you in your 20s and did you see your parents struggle through the Great Recession, right? So all of those environments kind of play into, our belief system, but they were there. They came online to keep us safe from something.
I
Okay,
can't
so
believe something you just said. The Great Recession was what, 2008, 9, 10?
8.
almost
It
20
was.
years ago.
That was 15 to
Yeah.
18 years ago.
Yep.
You're right. There are kids that are in their 20s now that were 4, 5, 6 years old when their parents were going through foreclosures and short sales and bankruptcies. And I
Yeah.
never even stopped to consider how the impact of the recession in 2008, 9, 10 is going to impact kids in their early to mid
Their
20s
20s.
today. I
Yeah.
never even considered that. That's an
Yep.
amazing point.
Well, and just think about it, like the Great Depression, right? My parents, both of them are deceased, but my in-laws who are just here, their children, that were born right at the end of the Great Depression. My mother-in-law, love her to death, but if there's a half empty bottle in the house, or maybe my daughter has tried a lotion, she doesn't like it. My grandmother or my mother-in-law is like, there is no way you can throw that out. Like, I need to use it. Like, she just will not let it happen.
Right.
So there's all these like little belief systems. And I was even just on a hike with my daughter yesterday morning, and we were kind of joking around because she made a half comment about tariffs and stuff like that. And I was like, I wonder what you're going to be like in like 10 and 15 years when you're out in the world. I mean, like, you've lived through COVID, tariffs, now my husband works for the government, so she hears endlessly about, the rift that's happening. And so I was like, I wonder how this is going to impact you. Like, let's unpack that, because, we can either hold a conversation now and help you work through it, or if those get baked into her belief system, they're going to show up later with how she works with money and people.
Yeah. And it's, again, just kind of the mind-blowing aspect of it. When we were at the graduation ceremony for my younger son, who's just graduating 5th grade, one of the teachers made a comment. He is the last class at the elementary school that lived through COVID, that experienced COVID. Next year's 5th graders were kindergartners in 2021 after all the schools had reopened and COVID. My son was in kindergarten when COVID shut the world down. So that's an amazing point in terms of, I've got to watch how his theories and how his mindset gets molded by COVID and here in Florida, hurricanes, and up there in Colorado, buses falling on your house.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
Well, we are all victimized. So, George, tying back to the mindset, bad things happen to us all the time, but we get to own how we respond to it. So yes, everybody's victimized. We just can't embody those things to be the victim. That is a very different. When we start doing that and playing the role of the victim, that's very hard because then we start to externalize what's happened and we give away agency. We start to tell ourselves, there's nothing I can do right now, right? Tears are happening. Like, this is happening to me. And I'm just coming up with an example that things are in the news right now. They're like, there's nothing that I can do about it right now. My bills are going to become insanely outrageous. My grocery bills are going to go through the roof. Eggs are going to stay at $14. That's when we have to switch to the I can't mindset to the how can I, because there's so many different ways to solve a problem.
That's
Yeah.
true. And I think a lot of us, we get nervous, the fears, and again, depending on how we were raised, the situation could be a lot of those factors. But I think right now we are so overloaded with information as well. Like, how do we handle, like, oh my God, there's so much bad news. What do I, like, how do I apply that to my situation? And I think a lot of us, we get nervous where it's like, am I going to be able to get the right job or find the right partner or
Well,
spend the right money or invest like, those are all questions that come up. We need to be able to say, like, where do we trust the advice coming from so they can help us to kind of, but the problem is our situations are all different. It's going to be how we handle, how we respond. That's going to be the key in our success when it comes to our journeys.
Mhm.
So love the intake,
well,
the take on this. It's just
one
definitely whoa.
one way to avoid the negativity that's brought by the news is to not watch the news.
Oh well,
You could always do that.
oh, that's easy. Like
But I did want to tell everybody. So I was looking, if anyone's interested in picking up the book, Money for Tomorrow, I did see that it's available on Amazon, but also you can go to ashwealth.com, ASHWEALTH, ashwealth.com. And there's a link to the book right there on the Ash Wealth website. So and I think there's also links there as well, Whitney, to your show, your podcast, the YouTube show, all that other stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. George, back to like, what can you do? Right. The mindset is, right, it's one of the ingredients. Okay. Then we have all the strategy, and that's probably like what you and I talk about all the time with like, clients and investors, right? Like, do you have enough reserves? Okay. When, if rainy day does happen, do you have like 6 to
are
12
you
months worth
ready?
of reserves? Do you
Yeah.
have some cash flow coming in, right? Like, let's not start deploying and ground up construction. Yeah, that's all like shiny and you can make big bucks there, but let's start putting your oxygen mask on, right? That's something that I like work with my investors with all the time. Let's get your debt layers built out, your cash flow layers. That gives you optionality, right? Then we move on to tier 3. Okay, like once tier 1's done, tier 2's done, like now we get permission to start doing a lot more of the equity investing. But the thing is, all those things are ingredients, and it's how we mix them together. And the mindset is huge. It's like the water, right? Anything that you make, whether it's bread, pasta, whatever, pasta sauce, whatever, like what's the number one ingredient? It is the largest ingredient by weight is probably water,
Yep.
right? And so you add too much, you're going to have a watered down product. You had too little, you're going to be stuck. It's going to be like, really sticky. And so you have to have that balanced mindset of being able to, use money as a tool, which requires that you need to know what you truly want.
Yeah, I think
Love it.
that's I think that's great. Great advice. I totally agree. So, again, they can find out more about you, Whitney, on the website, which is ashwealth.com. They can look up the books. They can find your podcast, Passive Investing Made Simple, on every wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can find Whitney's show as well as on YouTube. So wherever you're listening to us, go ahead and check out Whitney's show, subscribe to Whitney's show. There's just kind of flipping through the website and some of the other materials that I have. There's a ton of information, whether you're interested in residential real estate investing, whether you're interested in, we didn't even get to the car washes and the self-storage units and some of the more commercial aspects of the real estate investing. If you're interested in active investing, passive investing, there's literally a ton of materials available on Ash Wealth and some of the other platforms here that Whitney is on. So thank you, Whitney. We appreciate you being a guest on this week's show.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Is there anything you wanted to add, or anything maybe we didn't quite ask you?
Oh, well, there's, I feel like we have enough material for a follow-up show here. But if somebody is listening to this and they're ready to invest, especially passively, if you want to be kind of more in that active passive or passive passive category, you can reach out to me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com.
Love it.
Okay. So all one word, passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com.
Yes.
.com. Got it. And I will definitely put all of the different ways to contact you will be in the notes. So anybody that didn't pick it up from the audio or the video, I'll put all those links in the notes. But gosh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We should probably schedule a follow-up because there's a lot more that we can and probably should be talking about with you. So I do appreciate you being a guest on the show this week.
My pleasure.
And that the record button worked.
And that there were well, that's yet to be determined. That'll be determined once
good
we
point. Good point. Hold on, I spoke
haven't
too
read that
soon.
on my end. I think we're good.
Okay, we're probably good. A little inside joke for the podcast listeners. So, but I guess it's a mistake that every podcast host is going to make every once in a while, is to have a great interview that was never recorded. So, anyway, one of the ways you can kind of help us make sure that we do record all these future episodes, you can go to patreon.com/crushingdebt. That'll help support us. I'll make sure that we hit record on every episode from here on out. Also want to thank our longtime friend and sponsor, Sam Cohen. If you're an attorney or title company, you need malpractice insurance, contact Sam at attorneysfirst.com. Definitely check out Ash Wealth. Contact Whitney at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. Check out the book, Money for Tomorrow, How to Build and Protect Generational Wealth. Also check out all the other material that Whitney has out there, both in terms of her show, the other book, which we didn't even get to, except to mention the Resilient Women in Life and Business book. But wow, thanks again, Whitney. We really appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
And I think what that means is that Whitney definitely following Whitney and communicating with Whitney and reading all the books and listening to the podcasts should help you have more money at the end of the month rather than month at the end of the money. And we will talk to you in next week's episode.